What's up, Disney Internet? My name's Dan. You're watching my vlog. Now, if you've noticed, I have a microphone and I am filming off a webcam. Well, the story behind this is I am doing a field test of equipment for a neighborhood council. They want to start doing live streams so that people can watch their meetings or even see the meetings without having to necessarily show up. So it's an outreach thing. So I figured if I'm going to field test this, what better way than to do an actual, YouTube video. By the way, the council, if you want to check them out, they're Foothill Trails Neighborhood Council. They're my local neighborhood council. But if not, then, whatever. So now on to the actual meat of my discussion. So recently there was a video I saw by One Sargon of Akkad. He doing his usual This Week in Stupid, and it pointed me to a very disturbing article regarding SJWs. Now the article is in the New York Post, and it says elite K through 8 school teaches white students they are born racist. And I will have a screenshot right here of the article. So, what's going on with this thing? So, Banker Street Elementary School in New York has a SJW administrator. As you can see in the article, it talks about how the school is teaching about white privilege. Now, it's not the fact that they're teaching that people are privileged. What stirs me, it's their methods about doing this. They are engaging in segregated classes. So they have this thing in the class. It's a private school, by the way, so it's not a public school. So if any of you go to public school, I am glad that this isn't in public school, but it could fucking lead that way. So I am desperately afraid of this. So these kids are taken into what's called an affinity class, where they're taught about their ancestral culture. Now, for the non-Europeans, they are taught to be proud of their heritage. That their people got a raw deal in the past, which is not a bad thing, because when I took a college history course, and our professor said that it's important to understand all the points of view from history. I mean, that for a long time, history was been whitewashed. They left over the suffering of slaves, or the Trail of Tears. Those were like footnotes. So I'm like, okay, that's very important knowledge, because if you don't understand that, you're not going to learn. You're not going to go forward, and you're not going to get maybe stop these things from happening. But again, however, the white students, when they're taken to their affinity class, are berated, told them that they should feel bad for being born white. Oh, why? I was born white. I'm a bad person. Self-flagellation. And they're it reminds me of when religious schools say you should feel bad for being a sinner. Oh, you're born a sinner. You're a bad kid. That's why I left religion, and now SJWs have decided to turn that, the sins of the father onto the child, and they're doing it to white people. Now, I'm not, I'm white. I'm of European. I'm Scotch, Irish. I'm English. I'm Nordic, and all that fun stuff. I'm also 130 or 164th Cherokee, and like 128th. 1/128th Missouri, so I do have native lineage. And my grandmother lived in a time where she couldn't talk about being of that because that was a bad thing, so that's important. But to be kids, but no, to be told that your heritage make you bad is a horrible thing. These these kids are being abused. I mean, they're being told that they're bad. In fact, some kids have come home crying, and a number of parents are actually launching complaints saying that this is extremely lopsided. And I have to agree with them because the you're teaching that everything that white people have ever done is bad. I know Europeans did a lot of fucked up shit. Like I know that the conquistadors fucked over the Aztecs, the Maya, the Inca, who were pretty great civilizations, and they brought disease over to a population who had never encountered things like influenza, smallpox, and the bubonic plague. So yeah, they got, and you had the enslavement of Africans. Although what they'll probably never tell you in their infinity class is that the slaves that the English and the Spanish got from the Ivory Coast were given them by Africans, by more Africans with civilizations and cities going and leading wars against their more tribal neighbors and capturing them and selling them off into slavery. They forget to mention that part. And I've heard a lot of African Black Americans coming out and saying, yes, this is an important part because it's not just black white saying that black and people were enslaved by white people and leaving out that little middleman, the fact that you had people from Mali and Gao and all these other civilizations raiding the interior of Africa for slaves and even having slaves themselves is a little inconvenient for them because they don't want that to part of their narrative because that would add nuance, and nuance doesn't fit with the SJW mentality. It's very they like to have these nice fitted things in their their story. To use good analogy, their pet ideology is set up like Jenga, and anything that that pulls out a piece will likely cause the whole thing to come crumbling the fuck down. So they don't like this. They don't want, and I don't get this. Why do you need to segregate the kids? I think it would be better to actually bring them together. This kind of stuff is what causes race wars. This is the kind of things that causes resentment towards other ethnicities. You know what you should do? You should bring them into a class and say, hey, listen, what your ancestors did was fucked up, but know that you shouldn't do this. Learn from the past. As Satayana once said, he who fails to learn from their past is doomed to repeat it. So basically, by berating these children and then giving the non-European children preference, basically pumping them up, and then giving them muffins, and when they cast a refund, they come in with cupcakes and muffins. The white kids get nothing. Which is, in my opinion, child abuse. You're making kids feel bad for something they can't control. That's like when the Nazis attacked people who were gypsies, or the Turks killed the Armenians and the Greeks. I know it's not to that level, but it's that kind of going after something for something that someone cannot control, something that is in their genome. That it's basically genetic discrimination. And what pissed me off more about these issues is that I grew up in the 90s. I grew up in a time where diversity was praised. It was, every TV show had, that mixed group of kids. You had the Asian kid, the black kid, the white kid, the kid of who's Indian, and the Native American kid, and the disabled kid, and the girl on the team, and so on. So like Power Rangers, like not the first group, but like the second one, because you had a Hispanic guy, you had a half Asian guy, Johnny on Bosch, half Asian. You had a black girl, you had a gay guy. It turns out that Billy was gay. You have a woman, and then you have a guy who ended up becoming an MMA fighter. But it was a nice. It showed that the world isn't just white people, and it showed that we were progressing as the people. We're saying, hey, anybody can come in here. I think one of the big starting points was like Star Trek, because if you ever watch Star Trek, you ever watch interviews with Nichelle Nichols and George Takei, they talk about how when Roddenberry wrote Star Trek, that he wanted to make characters who weren't stereotypes. Back before Star Trek came out, there were black roles. You had Nichelle Nichols played a character. She played a lieutenant. I mean, I know she was basically this. Let's say she was the secretary, but she's a scientist. She's a communication officer. She is third in command. There's at least a few times where she took command of the ship in Star Trek, which means she's an officer, which had never happened before. And but the school won't teach that there are people like Gene Roddenberry who were white, who wanted to change, who who believed in the progression. These are the kind of people who would cause Nelson Mandela and Dr. Martin Luther King to roll in their grave. This is exactly what Mandela argued against when apartheid ended in South Africa. A lot of the local African tribes wanted to swing the pendulum the other way and basically get revenge on the Europeans who had colonized South Africa. And he said, no, that's not what we do. We don't do this because we'll be just as bad as they are. We need to show that we're better than that. We need to show that we are more forgiving, and that the past is the past, and we're going to move forward, and that we'll convince them with our good nature and our goodwill that this is the future, that we're going to do better. We're going to be better people. That's what they should be doing. They should be saying, look, the past is the past. You need to know about it, or else you repeat the mistakes of the past. But these SJWs are repeating the past by doing segregation, but in reverse. It's my biggest problem with feminists and any SJWs is they're repeating instead of trying to get away from it. They're out for blood, and not in a figurative way. They want their pound of flesh, and they can't just go, no, I'm an equal, and dude, this shit happened, and let's remember not to have this happen again. No, they want to hurt people instead of just letting things be the way they are. Let us progress. Let us go into a more understanding future. It's about vengeance now. It's about fucking vengeance, and I hate the fact people are doing that. And by the way, this is actually not just a thing in Bank Street Elementary. Apparently, let's see what other schools were doing it. Oh yes, there was Riverdale, Brooklyn Friends School, Calhoun School, Little Red Schoolhouse, and Elizabeth Irwin High School are doing the same thing. So, where to avoid. So, the lady who's doing this, I think it's a dude, is Ensu Wahi. Now, Ensu Wahi apparently is a longtime social justice activist. That should be your first clue that this is a person who shouldn't be doing anything there. So, I don't know whether... Oh, yes, it is a woman. So, Wahi is out for her pound of flesh. Instead of being a teacher and saying, hey, you're going to learn from your past. You're going to learn never to do this again. That we're going to avoid our history. You're not going to make the same mistakes. We're not going to, we're going to avoid segregation. All types. No. Fucking Wahi leaves in segregation. And you know what? You know what also is real... What? I'm gonna read a little bit of the article. So here it is. So here's what Wahi believes. Wahi believes even white babies, people, a the stage at which humans are completely, they're not aware, they don't have cognitive function, their memory isn't very good because those types of nodes haven't, you know, established their connections yet. So, okay, displays signs of racism. Racism? Do you mean the the one of those words you like to throw out there, or to quote Inigo Montoya, you keep using that word. I don't think you know its meaning. She encourages parents to talk to their kids about race as early as kindergarten, seeing that that's why it's done at a K through 8, making them hyper aware of racial difference and even examining their own whiteness. Basically, she's talking about white privilege. Privilege doesn't come from your skin color, at least not in the U.S. It comes from your socioeconomic setup. Yes, there are certain things that white people don't get happen to them that other people, like Arabs, will likely be harassed at the airport when it comes to the TSA. Africans are likely to be pulled over by the cops. That's racial profiling. For the most part, people are against that. Hence why there are a lot of white people like myself who are like, this needs to stop. This is a little overdone. You're making us look racist, and you're fueling these motherfuckers they're fueling their fucking victim complex. Instead of saying, what can we be done to stop this and fix this, they want to play the motherfucking victim. You are literally feeding them. Stop feeding the fucking trolls. These guys are trolls, and now they are abusing children. This is child abuse. Making a child say, you're bad, you're born bad, is fucking child abuse, and it shouldn't be done. I want Wahi fucking fired. I want someone to come in who legitimately knows about, their history and teach the class like this. Say, hey, who would be a great person? You know what? I vote. I know he's a professor, but I vote Godsod. From Professor Godsod, because at least he could basically say, hey, this is why we're different. This is or Richard Dawkins maybe, because he could say, okay, so the reason why people don't like people of other races is because it's built into some biological thing of kinship. What you need to do to make sure that doesn't happen, that people don't see people of other groups as enemies. You introduce them as kin, as friends at a young age, and that helps. What's the word I'm thinking of? It helps mellow that out. So now, like, if I see a black guy or see, or a Latino, I'm like, they're just a person to me. I don't see them as anything other than a person. I see them as just, that's Greg or that's Jose. I might, like, if they speak, like, I have coworkers who are Hispanic. I might look at them and go, hey, I need your help because dealing with this professor who only speaks Spanish, because I don't speak Spanish. We shouldn't be doing this, our differences are bad. When I was growing up, as I said, in the 90s when I was growing up, I remember the image of, like, the kids of all ethnicities, the little smiley, like, as the borders around, the paper they put up to put all your stuff, like, being around the world, like, a kid with African garb, an Asian kid, a Native American, an Indian kid, an Arab, a Dutch kid, a French kid, a Mexican kid, an Icelandic kid, a kid from Egypt, and what was implied when I was growing up is that, yes, we're all different, but that's what makes the world and the country so much better. We are an alloy. of so many cultures. You can't. The American culture cannot be defined as one culture. We are a amalgamation. You have in Louisiana, you have the French influence with the Caribbean spice. You have in where I live in Los Angeles, and even in Texas, you have the Mexican and the other Latino flavors because these areas used to be under their control. In the north, in like northwest, you have like Seattle, you have the native tribes there bringing their own. That's why certain cities are named after native things. And New York, you have let's see, you have Jewish, you have Italian, and Boston, you have the original English flavor plus the Irish added. It's a nice. We are a mixture. Why are you hating the fact that we are a mixed culture? Why do you want to make you feel bad for being? Yes, white people did some fucked up shit before. We conquered people. We violated the First Amendment by forcing a religion onto a indigenous culture. We took their, and now they're barely learning to, relearning their ancestral culture. They're relearning some of them. Some languages are completely lost. That was wrong. We got to admit that's wrong, but we don't have to be punished. We don't have to be like Catholics in the Middle Ages whipping themselves for their sins. MLK already died for that, I guess, in a way. He basically said stop judging everyone by their skin color. He was for meritocracy. He was about the merit. Judged by the content of your character, not by your skin, not by your heritage. Judge me by what I do, not but by how I look. My name's Dan. Thanks for watching this video. If you'd like, leave a comment below. I will have a link to the article in the description below. And subscribe. I will see you later. Bye.